Hey guys, Daniel here. This is another video, and in this video, I am joined by my arch nemesis, Cian Tormey, a brilliant artist of hit comic book series. He's going to do plenty of work for DC recently, stuff like Nightwing, Batgirl, Injustice Year Zero, Catwoman. He's done work for Marvel on the Darkhold, and recently it was announced he's taking over Superman, son of Kal-El, and so much more. But I was so lucky to get some blackmail on Cian, and I'm honored to have you on. So, Cian, thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm great, man. It is entirely my pleasure to be here. So,
Thank you. And if you play your cards right, you might get your family back. But yeah, so so much I want to get into. But first of all, big news. I mean, the Irish Times did an article of it, and I will say they're probably maybe a bit more professional than me. I will say that might be fair. As you can see, I'm humble as well. But how did Superman even fall into your lap? Because you're the first Irish man to ever draw Superman, as an ongoing series. So how did that come about to you?
that is essentially, I'd have to say thank you to Tom Taylor for that. So, I've worked with Tom now on a couple of different things. We first worked together on Injustice Year Zero, and then we worked on the most recent Nightwing annual.
Yeah.
And on the back of that, Tom had said to me, would you be interested in this other project that I have going on? Because initially the plan was I was supposed to work kind of as a second fiddle to Bruno on Nightwing because
Oh
I'd been
yeah.
working in the Bat Group. Yeah, yeah. So I'd been working in the Bat Group for a while. Just with the way things worked out for me career wise, I've been more or less working on kind of Batman or like Nightwing or something related stuff or the Outsiders. So Tom had said, "Oh, I've got this project. Would you be interested?" And I didn't know anything else about it, but I was like, obviously, yes. I mean, there's no other answer to a question like that. So yeah, I'd say within about a month, maybe 2 months, Tom had spoken to my editor Jessica Chen, who I've done most of my stuff with,
Yeah.
and had said, "I'm actually thinking maybe Keen might be the right fit for Superman, Son of Superman." And yeah, we kind of shifted things around, and that's how it kicked off.
Yeah, not half bad. And, I assume the second you heard Superman, you were like, I don't know, I'm just so busy. Superman, who even is that guy? But yeah, no, let me ask you this. You've gone to do so many different projects. Well, I don't know if this is fair to say, but none of them were Superman. If that, well, I mean, Injustice Year Zero was essentially Superman. But do you think that, Superman Son of Kal-El was like the highest caliber book you've gotten to do yet and kind of the highest end, or is it just the same as any other book?
Yeah, no, no, like so. There's the way I would approach it is like there's different metrics for the way I would approach what makes a good book. So for example, obviously commercially you could kind of look at whether a book is good or not,
Yeah.
but then you also have to realize that if there is a job that you're offered but you're not terribly interested in it, then obviously it's not subjectively a good book, right? So for me, when he did say, "Oh, look, it's going to be Superman," I was like, okay, first of all, fantastic. But second of all, I was kind of thinking, well, I have so much fun drawing the aesthetics of like gritty cities.
Yeah.
I had literally just finished. So I was finishing Darkhold while I was
Yeah. Yeah.
drawing the Nightwing annual. So I had like this kind of fantasy, like huge kind of epic war thing happening in one comic. And then I had this relatively small story happening between Nightwing and Red Hood. And but it was happening in Gotham, and Gotham is quite compelling just because it's such a dark and kind of gritty place. That when I was told, oh, it's going to be Superman, I was like, oh, that sounds fantastic. And then part of me was like, yeah, but that's also super clean. Like it's a much more
Yeah.
sanitized. Yeah, you step away from the kind of like the gritty noir kind of stuff, and you're into a much more kind of sanitized version of the world that these guys live in. So
That's
initially, I
fascinating.
was like, is this going to fit? But to be honest, man, like, so I cut my teeth when I started in DC on all of the 10-page stories that end up in the anthology books.
That Year of the Villain, was that some of your earliest DC work as well?
That it was, but it was even before that. It
Oh,
was
wow.
on Love in Space, I think. I did a story with
Oh,
Kyle
yeah,
Higgins.
yeah. The anthology.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Right. So I did a few of those in the first year for DC. I did a few 10-page stories, and uh, from the Green Lantern story I did with Kyle Higgins to I did a story with Paul Dini about Harley Quinn and Zatanna. And then I did a Beast Boy story with Mariko Tamaki. And across these three stories, just like as an example, the styles were completely different. And I have a lot of fun reading the script and trying to figure out what the script requires in terms of style, which I had to talk to my editors. And sometimes they would send me something and say, okay, we don't want it so much like that. And I was like, okay, no problem. The script tells you what it's looking for.
Yeah.
So when I got a Superman script on the back of a Nightwing script, it's totally different. It just looks for something else.
Yeah.
So there was no conflict. There was no aesthetic conflict for me artistically. Like I sat down to draw a Superman story, and it reads like a Superman story. So it felt like it should be drawn like a Superman story. You know, as well as I, actually, you probably know better than I do. Like these books look a certain way because the characters reflect a certain thing, whether it's a value or something like that.
Absolutely. Like you look at Superman, and of course he's going to be in bright city with happy people, and you look at Batman, it's the same, just flipped around. And so getting to work on something like Superman, would you describe, because you just brought up there you prefer working on these gritty landscapes, these gritty cities, so do you think working on Superman is kind of outside of your artistic comfortability in some ways?
Do you know what? I was worried that it would be, because I had so much fun drawing like Red Hood on the roof of a car, like firing his guns into the roof of the car while he's driving through the city, right? So like that,
I know that image, it's so good.
Yeah, like, but that's so much fun to do. When you're told like, oh, you've got essentially a splash page, and this kind of crazy stuff is going to happen. It's like any like film you've seen. And then when you're told, oh, it's going to be Superman, and I was like, oh yeah, well, it's going to be brighter. And what I was going to say was like those comics and stuff are brighter and more colorful, not because the book is designed that way. It's because that's what reflects the character, right? So initially I was like, am I going to be the right fit for this? But as soon as I started to read it, again, not to kind of like sound like I'm kind of being too sweet on him, but Tom's scripts are just so good. So as soon as you open it, you understand that you don't have to draw something that's not a natural fit for you. You have to draw what's a natural fit for the script, and the script is giving you everything that you need. And so it starts to look like a Superman book because that's what the script requires, and it just starts to become its own thing. And it's actually quite natural after that. So it's really, really fun.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And you just brought up, working on a character like Superman. Everyone kind of does know what Superman looks like, or you could ask your grandmother who's Superman, and they tell you who Superman was. So it's important for you to just understand these characters going in, because so much of that should be expressed. And you just brought up, the values of these characters should be shown in the city and stuff like that. So do you try and get a grasp on just who these characters are before you go on to a book?
Yes and no. So it happens quite a lot that I don't necessarily know who some of the characters are. If I've fallen off a series reading it, or if something has changed in something in the last couple of years, there might be characters that I don't know. But I mean, to your point, like these are archetypal characters. So you kind of know in your bones, like you're drawing comics because you love comics, right? You write comics because you love comics. You are interviewing about comics because you love comics. So you have a feeling in your bones about these characters, what they stand for, what they represent, the way they behave. Yeah. So you kind of know these things already. So when you start to draw them, there's a certain amount of your DNA that's made up of theirs as well, because you have known them your whole life. So it's not that difficult. Like nobody's going to hand you, like if somebody said to you, I want you to draw Superman, there is no adjustment period even for you. Like you are going to know, well, I know what a Superman comic looks like, so I'm going to stay true to the ideals and the aesthetic of the character that you recognize. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I absolutely see that there. And I think it's, I don't know if this is correct, but I think it's different when there's a character like Superman, because you look at characters like Batman, and like as cool characters as they are, I don't think they represent anything as heavily as Superman does. Because it's in a sense where you look at Batman, he's a character, but like you look at Superman, you say that's an idea, even more so than him going around punching aliens and stuff. It's what he represents. That's how we get the best Superman stories. It's when he just shows what you respect, and that's what's great in Tom's run. It's just Superman, doing Superman things, helping people, being kind and stuff like that, which is why
Yeah.
I don't think there is any other character like Superman in terms of what they represent and stuff like that.
It's interesting because one of the things that struck me when I worked on Injustice was I read one of the scripts that I wasn't drawing.
Oh yeah.
And because I did alternate issues on that, but one of the scripts had this beautiful scene where Superman and Batman were up on the space station and they were looking down over Earth, and they had this very simple, almost disarmingly superficial conversation about Batman saying, like, I see the danger on the ground for people. Like, I see the way people are. I see how potentially dangerous they can be.
Yeah.
And I'm there to try and kind of regulate the worst impulses that people have. And Superman is like, yeah, but I see the potential of all of the people. Like, I'm not worried about how bad people can be. I can see how great they can be. And between these two yin and yang characters, you have like this perfect kind of dichotomous worldview that complements, they balance each other out, right? Because like one is dark and one is light. We know that, but this makes sense even ideologically. Like the one is a good guy. They're both good guys, but they're both fighting different battles because like no one hero has to be a hero to everyone, right? So I totally know what you mean. Like Superman is an idealistic kind of American icon. He's he is, if you think about this, just even in terms of the American audience, you've got the greatest idea of freedom and standing up for the right thing. But then you also have this darker side. But even within the darker side that Batman lives in, he's also still a force for good. Do you know what I mean? So I know what you mean. Like, you can't point at Batman and say, like, this guy stands for, I don't know, like truth and justice in the sunlight, which Superman is, because you can see him standing with the flag. But Batman kind of stands for truth and justice just in the shadows. And therefore, they're kind of the same character, and yet they employ such totally different ways of just fighting crime, or like even fighting for what they believe in. So it's funny, like I think you can miss sometimes that Batman is as archetypal an American force, an ideological creation as Superman is.
Yeah.
But because he's kind of down in the dirt with the rest of us, he doesn't get to kind of be as clean. But I would also say, and it's the last thing I'd say about it before I talk too much, but the cool thing about that is it allows Superman to be as naive and ideological, because he's got another guy who's kind of fighting for the same things, but he's down the back alleys doing it.
I think there has to be a guy like Batman for every Superman.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
There's those two sides of that. Like Superman maybe can't do what Batman does, and Batman I don't think would have the heart to do what Superman does. Is that like they're both good at what they do, but they both.
But he doesn't necessarily see that that's a way forward, because he's down in it. So they're both doing, like, it's the wonderful thing that these guys, the way they've been written and the way they've naturally grown, is that you have two characters that are essentially doing the same thing, but they're fighting very different wars. And therefore they can still be on the same team while being utterly apart from each other. But there's a reason why Clark loves Bruce and vice versa. Like, it's easy to kind of, I feel, and this could just be a personality thing for me, but like I can totally occupy Bruce's head and understand why he loves Clark. But I would possibly struggle to do it the other way around.
Yeah.
But when you lay it out the way we've just kind of talked it through, you can kind of understand why Clark is like, this guy is fundamentally not the same as, he is the same as me, but his way of expressing it is not the same as me. And like, Clark's not naive either. He might be kind of this kind of hayseed Kansas guy, but like, he knows that Batman is still fulfilling a very necessary role, but can rely on him to do it because his ideals and his values are the same.
Definitely. That's a weird thing I love in media. You see it, like I saw in the recent Eternals film where these people who aren't us, but this doesn't really apply to Batman and Superman, I guess, but they see us and they say, well, for all the hatred, for all the misery, for all the killing, for all the torturing, there is this little, there are these good people who just want to do good. And you see those two sides of it. That's why when you see in media, mainly aliens or gods, they come down, they look at Earth, And they see, so one of them may say, you look at this world, what do you see? I see cruelty, I've seen wars, I've seen people dying. Then the other one will say, yeah, well, there's just some good people, and maybe that's all it takes. And that's what I love, that dynamic. Batman and Superman are the two, like you said, archetypal characters of DC, because they're both good guys, but they both represent kind of the two sides of that coin of being a good guy. And
I think one of the things that's lovely about Superman as well is that when you position him against somebody like Superman, or as somebody like Batman, what makes, like, Batman is infallible to a point where it's almost nonsense. Like, it's fun to watch him get into the scrapes he gets into, but we all know he's kind of getting out of them, because and the clue's in the title. Like, he is the world's greatest detective. He's smarter than everybody. He has the answer that nobody else had. He was playing 4-dimensional chess when everybody else was playing the regular kind. Like, he's just so much smarter. But the really lovely thing about somebody as naive as Clark Kent is that he meets Batman and he's like, yeah, but you don't necessarily see it in its entirety. Like, maybe even though you're smarter than everyone and you know everything and you're already 5 steps ahead of everybody else, the one thing that you can't see is everything from, like, up here, and I think that's what makes the two of them such a fun couple. Like, when they're together, like, they're quite funny. So,
and this is obviously the age-old debate I'm not here to talk about, but the Batman versus Superman thing. And one of my favorite stories of that is where Superman loses to Batman, and when he said, he goes, well, I mean, I thought it'd mean more to him if he won than it would to me. That's like, that's what I think Superman would do in that situation. But then when you have a character like John Kent, who you're currently, drawing, and he did something that's being emphasized to everyone. He's not Superman. And well, he well, I didn't say that probably. He's not Clark Kent, but he is Superman. And when
that's a great distinction.
And he's struggling with that because he knows what his father was like. Imagine if me or you, our dad was Superman. That'd be like, well, I'm trying to be this, but I don't know how, because when there's someone just as good as that, and that's really interesting from a storytelling dynamic. So are you drawing, because you've gotten to do Superman before, are you drawing John kind of, differently or more uniquely as you would with a character like Clark Kent, and just trying to make him his own character?
So I think there's probably two ways to answer that. So the simplest way to answer it, like the first way, would be that I was never a huge Superman fan. So people have asked me this before,
and that's a wrap up on my interview with Cian Tormey. Everyone,
it's been a pleasure, and I guess we'll never talk again. So no,
you weren't a fan growing up.
No, I wasn't. I really wasn't. And the reason why was because, so in the last like 10 years or so, I studied like a lot of like screenwriting and stuff before I got into comics. And one of the things that one of the core screenwriting rules is that for a character to be interesting, there has to be conflict. There has to be inherent conflict. You need weakness in the character, right? And one of the things about Superman is, to my untrained eye, the reason why I didn't like him was because he doesn't have any weaknesses, right?
Yeah, that's the problem a lot of people seem to have. And the same with me as well. Yeah, but
and the thing is, like, it depends on how he's written, obviously. But I mean, I think on the face of it, one of the reasons why you give an incredibly like overpowered character human relations is that the humans become their weakness, which is kind of like, it's a false friend when you're writing, right? But if you watch most of the cartoons, Superman is on another planet and he gets into a fist fight with somebody, and it kind of goes on for a few minutes, but there's no inherent danger here. Like, he's not going to lose. He's not going to be. He doesn't even bleed. He is invincible, right? And we know that. So generally speaking, it's like, okay, unless somebody finds Lois, Superman doesn't really have a price to pay. So you often find him having to save people from like some kind of overarching like evil. But there's nothing really happening within Superman. And I used to just kind of be like, I don't really get it. I don't really understand the inherent conflicts. So I wasn't really into it. And then it wasn't until, and I said this in the Irish Times interview in the newspaper here in Ireland, it wasn't until I read. So when I was drawing Injustice, that one of the first, I was drawing these like 10-page segments that Tom would send, and one of the, I don't know what happened, but like one of the deadlines was quite tight. So I got 3 pages rather than 10. So I got the scene, but I didn't get the whole like segment that I was supposed to draw. And so I was waiting for Tom to kind of get the rest, but I didn't know where the scene was going to be, like at the start or at the end or whatever. And I don't know if you had the chance to read it, right? But it was one of the first times. I think it was actually the first time I ever drew Superman for DC. Wow. And it was the scene where the Green Lantern's husband is in this hospital room, like within the Justice League headquarters, the brownstone that they have in New York. And so the the Green Lantern has been essentially almost, where he's in a coma thanks to whatever the Joker had done. And they had Clark and Jimmy. I can't think of his name. I'm gonna have my nerd card revoked. But Clark talks to him, and they start describing what it's like to be in a relationship with somebody who's super powered and how difficult it is. And I didn't realize
OG Green Lantern, isn't it? In that
yes, sorry, it is. Yeah.
I know. Yes.
Yeah,
and they were having a conversation about just what it's like,
Yeah, and Clark can identify with how difficult it is for him that his super powered husband is in a coma, because he's like, I also have like a human partner in Lois, and she has to go through this, and I understand that, and they kind of bond in this moment where Superman stands back and like holds his hand out and says, "My name is Clark." And I realized that Superman's at his most super when he's not being Superman. He's just being a man. And I know that sounds really obvious, but when I saw this one scene, when I read it, and I was like, I'm going to have to draw this, and I have to make sure that the acting, the emotion, all this kind of stuff is supposed to make sense between these two characters. I was like, oh, wow, I was really naive. I thought that Superman was kind of quite boring because you only ever see clips of the fights from the cartoons and stuff. But when you read the comics, he's more human when he's being Clark.
Yeah.
And there's a point where like we see Superman because we know he's Superman because he wears a blue suit and has like the insignia. But sometimes you have to kind of go, oh no, that's Clark Kent in a suit. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not Superman. That's Clark in a super suit. And that's when you go, oh, this character is way richer than I thought. So when it comes to drawing John, I think I had this kind of revelation. I'd had it revealed to me just before I started drawing it. And I realized that, okay, now I understand what makes him special. But now I also understand why he's also not Clark Kent either.
Yeah.
So drawing John wasn't about drawing Superman, if you and I are using the word Superman to actually mean Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Because as you said, he's not Clark Kent. He's the new kid in the same suit, but he's got all of the worries that Superman used to have. Like, he hasn't learned any of these lessons, and he's got a whole load of new lessons to learn as well, like, because he's human. Definitely. Like Clark wasn't. So there is actually something to be said for the fact that Clark was kind of allegorical in this idea that he wasn't from here and he had to learn what it was like to be here. But there's something really lovely about the fact that John is from here and he still has to learn what it's like to be from here, like the rest of us do, because none of us are really kind of doing it too well at the moment. So he can kind of be emblematic of how we learn. So
that's a brilliant point. And I love how you brought growing up, you weren't a Superman fan. It's like, the same for me. Like a couple of years ago, when I was younger, I played a Superman. Like I played Lego games, and it's like, my sister, I'd say, all right, listen, I would say to my sister, you're being Superman because I'm being Batman, because I'm not playing a Superman. Because it's like, I never, because he's not Batman, but I appreciate, it was weird, I just appreciate the fact that he existed. And I always knew what he was. I always knew he was liberty, unity, freedom. I'm that as a core concept. But then when I started interviewing Superman creators like Grant Morrison, Frank Whiteley, Philip Kennedy Johnson, just the way they talk about the character, and just the more you think of him and the more you strip away his layers, you see Superman for what he is.
Yeah.
Just a good, honest person, which is what I really love about that. And there's obviously all those other sides like Clark Kent and Superman, but that's why I think Superman is such a great character. And you know, and I love the fact that John Kent is a Superman for a new age, for a
Yeah,
new
yeah.
generation. And
But also, man, like when you take uh the work of somebody like what Grant Morrison, Frank Whiteley did in All Star
oh yeah,
Superman, which every single person has that on their list of like the best Superman books.
has to be.
The reason why is because like the first thing that you do is you take a character like Superman and you take away his invincibility and you make him vulnerable. You have to create something that has inherent conflict in it. And so the first thing in that story is they take Superman and they just take away his ability to survive everything. And that's where he learns all over again.
Yeah.
So that's what Tom has done with John Kent. He has gone to the fundamental core concept of Superman and stripped it all the way back to what is it? And it's about naivety and having a belief in humanity that we might be losing,
Yeah.
and having a greater set of values and a belief in the fact that we can be better. And it's been instilled in him by Superman, which is pretty cool. But like, he still has to kind of measure his values and the core set of beliefs that he has been instilled with against the actual reality. And that's one of the fun things is like, it's not a mistake that he's so much fun when you balance him against Damian Wayne, who
who's like, it's that same parallel we were on earlier of the Batman and Superman thing.
However, Damian Wayne has no values whatsoever.
Yeah, yes.
So like, it's not even like Batman, who goes to terrible lengths to do the best he can.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, he had his dad and his mom who were supposed to be like these philanthropic, like amazing people who did what they could for the people of Gotham. So he grew up with the values that you and I have about like being a good person and doing all the best things that you can. However, he was confronted with like the random banality of evil that humanity can give you. However, like Damien grew up in a cave and his mom is like a ninja and his dad is like an eternal ghoul and he doesn't have any of that. So the idea that these guys are teaching each other is really, really fun. Like there's a whole new dynamic, even though it feels like recognizable. It's quite different. Like, so
will we get to see you working on Damien at all in the future?
So somebody asked me that on Twitter. I don't know yet. So
you don't know. Oh, nice.
So we've only, like, myself and Tom have only broadly discussed. He's filled me in on what he had in mind. So I know where we're going, but so at the moment, like I've issue 7 is out.
Yeah, it
issue
just came
8.
out last Wednesday as a time of recording, January 18th. It came out, so you can all go pick that up from your local comic book store. And you draw a big crab monster. Am I correct?
I do, which is quite fun. Issue 8 is finished now. So
so are you doing the layouts for 9 now?
No. So issue 9 is a crossover. Bruno is taking that because so John will be in Nightwing 89. Is that right?
Yeah, 89. Yeah.
I think it is 89, yeah. So then Bruno is drawing issue 9 of Son of Superman, and I have the script for issue 10 right now. So that's what
and the solicits just came out for the solicits everyone for issue 10, which is sometime, I don't know, I didn't remember that. But yeah, so that's it so far. And so do you have plans to work in it for as long as until Tom fires you? Is that the plan?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So hopefully he won't, because he's the reason why I'm drawing this. So unless I've done something terrible in the last while, I should be okay. But
I've loads of blackmail on you, so if I ever choose to share that with Tom, that's basically your job down the train.
Keep that stuff under your hat.
Yeah,
but
no, I think to my wall of Irish comic creator blackmail right next to Mooney up there.
Yeah, like push all of the red string out of the way and see if you can find where my Polaroid is.
Yeah, can you see my trench coat? I just took it off before we began on my little top hat. I was the other day you saw someone outside your house smoking a cigar, watching you. That was not a fever dream. That actually.
Oh, I thought that was my mum. Oh, that was you. Okay,
it was very expensive to, penny. They're called pennies, but it's not cheap to buy a big trench coat and go around. But yeah,
not when you have to wrestle 3 raccoons out of it on the way into the Dunleary cinema.
Exactly, yeah. Me and my friends all stacked on top of each other going in. I'd like to buy some adult beers and stuff. A very eventful day. But yeah, no, absolutely. You're getting to work on Superman. So let me ask you, how you just brought up a really great take on Superman. That's what I love as an art, like as you as an artist. So before working on Superman, did you think of this about the character, or did working on Superman kind of open your eyes to what Superman is as a concept?
So before I worked in comics, I used to work in advertising, right?
Yeah.
So I would often work on different clients on different ad campaigns that would require different style. I was an art director.
Oh
So
yeah.
different campaigns would require different styles. Some clients would like funny ads, some had to be quite serious.
Yeah.
So you'd have to adapt the script and the art style to whatever the clients required, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason why like certain brands feel different to other brands, right? So like you have to kind of tune into what the brand requires. So I haven't really found it difficult to adapt stylistically to what the script needs.
Yeah.
And I can kind of point at a couple of different things that would prove that like that's not me kind of thinking I'm more pliable than I am artistically. Like you can see in a couple of different stories that hasn't been difficult. So for me, when I started to read this, like one of the things that I really, really love to do when I'm drawing is I pay an awful lot of attention to the physical acting and the expressions of the characters. Like I really, really care about trying to make people understand what the characters are feeling. It's very easy to lose yourself in how much fun it is to just draw like super muscular characters, like getting
Yeah,
into
and
these.
giant crabs, which
Yeah, well, and giant crabs. But if you read it, you hopefully understand what the giant crab is actually going through in his emotional arc. Actually, I'm trying to remember whether it was a woman or not. Anyway,
yeah,
hope
discussing the pronouns of a crab is not something I assumed I'd be doing
and
today.
it's 2022, so I don't want to misgender the crab either. So the thing is, the crab goes through an emotional arc regardless, but hopefully that comes across. Certainly, should be established in issue 8, but it definitely comes to a natural and fulfilling conclusion in issue 7, and it finishes in issue 8.
Yeah.
So hopefully I've managed to even get the crab acting right. Now I did have to
That's
spend.
something I think you failed in your previous work when
Yeah.
the crab acting, it just hasn't been good enough. They didn't even look like crabs. They looked like humans. And it really like I just burned all of the copies of anything you've ever owned because of that. So just do better.
It's very sharp of you, because that was one of the first editorial notes I had. So over the Christmas break, when most people were relaxing, I spent a lot of time just with the crabs.
Yeah,
in an effort to
you had to get method with it. You broke into Dublin Zoo and you sat in the crab and you were like
giving it all that.
yeah. And you were like, no, I am a crab. I am one of them. You went very Jared Leto with it. Like you were in there
No,
the
definitely,
crab exhibit, like crawling. Like a bunch of kids were traumatized, but sacrifices we make for our art.
Yeah, no, and well, like, and look, it was difficult, obviously, trying to like get back into society the way I had lived before, but it was a lot easier for a while, just like getting onto the train, because I just kind of like
yeah, you could just sideways onto everything.
Yeah.
It was very weird trying to get him to sit down for this interview because he's walking around like that.
Yeah, like I just don't really sit down anymore.
Yeah,
but like...
and that's why on the computer you're constantly stuck like that. But yeah, I don't think any other artist would go into Dublin Zoo and be one amongst the crabs. So who says you're not?
That's true. It is. True.
I assume you just charge it all to DC. You're like,
yeah.
That's fair enough. Now you have a little crab exhibit in your house as well, so it's a win-win. All in all,
absolutely.
Nothing bad. We've learned nothing. It was a good experience. Always break into Dublin Zoo and pretend you're a crab.
There's no reason to worry about the damp in the house anymore either. Like,
if that's one thing you take away, if there's one thing you take away from this interview, be a crab.
Be more crab.
Yeah, be more crab. And yeah, after that's not even the weirdest thing you have to draw. You got to draw like a cocaine villain in Catwoman.
Oh yeah, that was super fun.
That was so cool. I literally wrote that up because I was going to strategically bring it up, but you just gave me. So yeah, you got to draw a cocaine sniffing villain. Just yeah.
That was that you can blame Sean Murphy for that. Sean and Blake, they came up with that. Like I was very much on the receiving end of that. Because I've known Sean,
just like okay, there has to be a cocaine villain, and that's actually a real villain from the 80s who for some reason just loves cocaine, and that's their super villain. Like I don't even Snowflame. What a great character.
Snowflame, yeah, right. And the thing is that if you Google Snowflame, one of the sequences that comes up is him doing cocaine. And so, like, of course, if you're going to
maybe we wouldn't get away with that.
Well, you can't. So that's what I was going to say. So we drew, like, his whole point was that he, like, I don't even know. Actually, I was going to say, I don't know what the creators were on in the 80s, but like, I think it's
I wonder.
It's quite clear.
Put on your detective hat and try. There has to be something. What could it be? It's staring me right in the face.
Well, I wonder. So, but the thing was, so in obviously, like, nobody can afford it anymore. So like all of the creators,
I'm sure that's the problem with it. They just can't afford it. If it was like financially liable, then DC.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, obviously, if you could carry it in while you were living with the crabs, unfortunately, too damp an environment. But yeah. So what happened was, generally speaking, if you're going to bring one of these characters back into like modern rotation, you have to do a pastiche of what made them. Well, you don't have to, but like, it's nice to have a nod back to whatever the core of the character was for the people who recognize who they were. So this guy gets his power from cocaine, and in the script, I might sound a little bit crazy if you haven't read it, but like in the script, he lives on an island where like that's what they manufacture. He's a criminal, like that's kind of the world he lives in. It's not that he's like just like some party guy. And but so I had done this because it's like a triptych. It's like these three panels where he does it. Because like I'd never seen him before, so I found it Googling it. And when I had drawn it, we like got through the thumbnails were approved, and like I was drawing it. And when I had submitted it, I think it was Jessica that was like, "Yeah, legal's not going to let us do this." Yeah, and I was like, "But it's a reference to what they did before." And she was like, "Yeah, no." And I was like, "Oh, so like the legal department was probably like, they might have been doing cocaine back in the 80s because they just let it go. But like everything has changed now. So we had to kind of like shift it. So
let's reiterate, I repeat, no one is doing any cocaine at the DC.
No. Oh no, man, nobody can afford it.
Yeah,
but like,
that's it. Yeah.
So if you look now, if you look at that thing, there's a moment where he stops and he speaks to Selena Kyle. And he says something to her, and then I think he opens a bag, if I remember correctly. And all we did was, in the final panel, we just like, instead of him, which again, I would point out that I had drawn what had happened before, so it wasn't like some gratuitous thing. But where he goes to do cocaine, myself and Jessica were like, can we just shift the panel the whole way down so it's just the top of his head? So like at the bottom of the panel now, it's just his head goes down, and I think there's just like a sound effect of him just like sniffing or something. And then the next page is where he just like turns into his rainbow colored like cocaine powered guy. But yeah, it made me laugh a lot, man.
I already know how I'm going to promote this: crabs, cocaine, and Cian Tormey. Which honestly maybe sounds
episode title in a nutshell. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Cocaine, crabs, and Cian Tormey. It works so well.
People are going to be so annoyed when they press play and it's not you and me sitting on some like beach somewhere in Jamaica.
Yeah, smoking from winning our insurance scam, robbing a bank. It's like,
absolutely.
We're on the phone to Declan Shelby. I bet you're wondering where we are. And yeah,
he's like, you're around the corner on the beach, right? I'm on my way.
How did you know? It's just, I think you'd probably recognize the Dublin beach because it's very cold as opposed to some nice Jamaican beach.
And the water is about 2 miles away as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all just like this brown seaweed that pushes out. And it's like, you ever run into the sea, it takes you 5 minutes because you're running all on brown seaweed.
Pretty grim.
That's why I love, people think like Ireland is so great. Like it's a magical fairy tale. And like, not in Dublin. Well, I mean,
it can be.
Yeah, but like,
it can be.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Yeah, in some places, but maybe in the majority of places, maybe not in some places. But yeah, if you're looking to come to Dublin, you can see two Irish men here. We've had a very invigorating, genius conversations about cocaine, crabs, and stuff. Yeah. No, so yeah, there you go.
If you want to see Dublin, we go and visit the West.
That's probably it. Yeah. Just skip Dublin, go to some other country.
Just like go to the other side.
And was Catwoman your first ongoing work for DC?
Yeah. So the lovely thing about it is that so obviously within the last like 2 years, schedules have been kind of bonkers for everyone. So obviously the COVID and stuff like that really kind of upset publishing dates and stuff. Yeah. And if you remember. So I had started on Darkhold. I had done Darkhold Alpha.
Yes. With Steve
Just about
Orlando.
Yeah, so I was halfway through that when it was paused. So so there was like lots of kind of weird stuff happened in the first year.
Yeah.
But I had also been like, I'd signed up for some digital issues of like Batman and stuff like that. So like I was super busy throughout. But it was still very much a case of do 2 issues of Outsiders and finish off Darkhold, and here's a Nightwing annual, and Injustice had come and gone and stuff. So everything, there was loads of work to do,
Yeah.
but everything was just like the whole industry. I'm sure like some of the other people you've interviewed have probably spoken about it too, but like it just kind of reshuffled a little bit.
Yeah.
So when everything started to settle, it was fine. But what was lovely was for the first time in ages. So I've got, like I said, 2 issues of Superman are done. We had some like scheduling wrinkles at the beginning. So they were a little bit kind of tighter than you'd normally do, but like everything is perfect. We've got the whole train running like on time again. It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
So what's great for me, just like personally with this ongoing series now that comics seems to have totally just like the ship has settled,
Yeah.
is yeah, we're back to like a perfectly normal schedule,
Nice.
and there's time to just kind of breathe and like stretch again and remember what it's like to be able to stand up straight and like rest your wrists so that the pain in your thumb and stuff is kind of gone. So that to
From all the
me,
cocaine and the crabs, or the
that
comic.
the cocaine and the crab meat, like that gets you through,
that
like,
got
the
you
most
really bad.
the most decadent part. But like
I
there's a
might
bunch
have to cut out so much of this, or maybe I'll just leave it all in. Do it uncut,
leave
do a
it in.
raw version.
Leave it in.
Yeah, do it.
This
Release
is
the
raw seafood.
release
Yeah.
the cocaine cut. Get a trending. Actually, maybe don't get a trending. We don't have any cocaine on us or crabs. Everyone.
No, man. Again, like I said, no one can afford it. But
Yeah.
so
But yeah,
that
the
crab meat's
industry
so
shut
expensive.
down.
Pardon me?
The industry shut down at some point, and you're all
There
reshuffling.
was a point initially when if you think about it, like so much of the comics industry relies on the brick and mortar network of the stores.
Yeah.
So when America was about a month or two, let's say about 6 weeks behind us in terms of like responding to the initial COVID outbreak, like 2 years ago, that there was an awful lot of like when we had shut down in Ireland, America was still kind of running like nothing had happened because it hadn't really exploded there. So because it came from Italy over here, it was so much closer, and then it didn't kind of spread in their massive population centers.
Yeah.
So we were about like kind of 2 months, 6 weeks to 2 months ahead of them, and then they caught up with us, and then everything shut down. But because they rely so much, like because it's publishing like at its core. So when Marvel and DC, for example, and lots of other companies, when they rely on the comic stores to order issues, and those stores close and they don't know when the stores are going to open again, it was much safer for them to just stop making comics. And an awful lot of people at the time were like, well, why don't you just start making digital comics? And the problem with that was like, if everyone starts to buy digitally, then there's also an awful lot of people who own stores, like great guys who really, really like comics, and their stores will close. So we have a duty of care to everybody. So there was like about maybe 2 or 3 months where everything just kind of stopped.
And Injustice was digital, wasn't it? Year zero.
It was. And then I did a couple of other ones. And so one of the, even just like nuts and bolts stuff, one of the fun things about that job was when we have to draw issues that are just for digital, we have to draw each page. I don't know if you've noticed this, and for any of your viewers and listeners who might like go back and look at this, when we do these fully digital issues, your standard screen, it's changed a little bit now because there's much more variation in screens, but your standard like TV screen is about half of the comic page. So an 11 by 17 page, if you look at that in terms of two TV screens, like if you turn your phone sideways, it's more or less half a page. And so all of the digital only comics that we've done, they're all split in the middle. So you will never have a panel that breaks like a regular comic page. So we find ourselves like, so there's no more splash pages.
Oh yeah.
So you'll never see a splash page in one of those digital first issues because the script might say it, but we have to draw it basically in the half page. So when you're swiping, when you're reading it on Comixology, it'll fill the screen for you, but for us, it's a half page we have to draw. So yeah, so there was loads of cool formatting quirks that we had to solve in those months and stuff, which I find really fun because
Oh
my
really?
background, like I said, was in advertising. So we'd often make an ad for like we might shoot an ad for print, like it would go in a newspaper, but we'd have to make it work for half a page, a full page, or it would go on websites and it would have to be across the top or down the bottom, stuff like that. So reformatting and telling stories within those things was something that I was doing before. So yeah, so there was loads of really fun stuff to kind of get our heads around as we transitioned into that. But it fixed itself, as you know, like about 6 months later, and then things went back to normal. So
And so, would you prefer working like on digital comics, or is it nice you get the traditional? Because it is the Injustice the only digital comic you got. I mean, I'm sure the other ones are on, but that's the first one that was kind of digital first, like only really for digital.
that was the main one. And
Yeah.
then I did a 10 pager, a Batman story, which it was recently, it came out. I think I have an issue of it here
Was that the
actually.
one where like Gotham was underwater?
Flooded. Yeah,
Flooded.
Matthew Rosenberg. Yeah, so that was a
Yeah.
digital one first as well.
Oh,
So
nice. And so
yeah, so
I imagine there's some like you just brought up there, there's storytelling quirks. I mean, I suppose you could say, but I
yeah.
know a lot of people they've had to adapt to new ways when they're doing a specific comic because there's a certain
Mhm.
vision behind it. Like I've
Yeah.
had on some artists who had to do cinematic panels because
Yeah.
that's what the story called for.
Yeah.
And so is it interesting for you or is it daunting for you to get to experiment with new like panel formats and new layouts and stuff like that? Is that
Oh, I love it.
oh you actually do
I
enjoy
love
it?
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the thing is that like it's always everything that you are doing is problem solving, and the more parameters you have to solve within, the more creative the solutions have to be. So like if somebody says, like, if you say, oh, what'll I draw, and nobody tells you what to draw. But if somebody says, oh, draw a superhero, and you go, okay, fine, what kind of superhero? Oh, we'll draw one of the bad guys. Like the more parameters that you build, the easier it is to solve within. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you're just kind of like blue skying everything all the time, it's just too grand. So when you get cool things like, oh, the format of the story has to be only half a comic page, well, then you have to start coming up with clever ways to tell the story within that because you can't break any of the half page marks and stuff like that. So it's quite fun. Would I like to do it all the time? No, because it's
Yeah.
quite lovely to work within like a page format. But for example, it's nice to have the challenge every so often because you can see how easy it is to fall into the lull of just like creating into the same format all the time. That's why when you see something as wonderful as what Bruno has just done on the last Nightwing issue, where he's just like changed into like he made the whole issue one long panel, you're like, we can also still solve within the formats that we already have and create like really super cool stuff there. So yeah, personally, that kind of challenge is like that's super fun, super fun.
Yeah, definitely. And so, like, I have something we can do together. I call it White Fire. It's my completely original comic about a crab who snorts coke. I came up with it just, I don't know, just the other day. My own original creation. I didn't steal it from anywhere. We can,
I
we,
like it.
we can split it 60-40 both ways. That's how it works.
Oh yeah, well, let me just check the different clause in my contract.
Oh,
There you go. See
we're
that?
getting the crab puns here already. Oh. I used to
Yeah.
interview. I used to interview good people. I used to be able to do a good interview without bringing up crabs and coke.
You
Ah,
knew what you were into or in for when you asked me. So
yeah. Okay, whatever. Let's go now. Absolutely. But yeah, so everyone can go pick up Superman, Son of Kal-El, but we're not finished yet. Another thing I want to touch on is Darkhold, which was that your first ever Marvel work?
Star Code.
No, Darkhold.
Oh, Darkhold. Sorry, I misheard you. So
It's my north
Darkhold.
side accent. It's my north side
No,
accent.
no, not at all. I was like, no, because I was like, I had done a couple of pages of Nova
Oh, did
in
you?
in Annihilation. I had taken a couple of pages from Juanan Ramirez to help him and Matthew
Okay.
Rosenberg out like a long time ago. So Annihilation Scourge, that's what it was. So I'd done a few pages in that. So I wasn't sure whether I was like, hold on, have I forgotten the title of that? Because that made sense to me. No, the first Marvel work I ever did was I had done a 10-page Doctor Doom story for Will. Yeah, it was Will. Will Moss was the editor. He asked me to step in because like I'm a huge Doctor Doom fan, as you know.
Yeah,
And
your profile pictures, Doctor Doom.
yeah, man, I love like I'm a huge fan of any of the. I know it's ironic that I'm drawing Superman now, but I love the the villains.
Oh
I
yeah.
just find them so much more fun to draw. Like, just please somebody put me on a book of villains. Like, I would really, really have so much fun.
So
But
far, there's a nice variety. You've gotten to Crab Monster, Snowflame, Doctor Doom, and a few more. But that's it. That's the trilogy. That's the
quite
trilogy.
weird. It is
Every
quite
artist
weird.
aspires to that. To just
It is
those.
quite weird.
Yeah. No, but absolutely. So you enjoy drawing the villains.
Yeah, yeah, big time. I just find them really, really fun. Like to be honest, if I could do my own comic, and I haven't quite figured out how to do it yet, because I don't know how it would work, but I would love to do a comic about a bad guy that was just purely bad, like no redeeming factor.
That's
Just
why. That's why the Suicide Squad are my favorite comic book team of all time. Because there is a few of them who are obviously good, but I love it when there's just this guy who's like, no moral. Screw that. I don't want to. I don't want to have this character change moment. I just and it's like it's just stuff like that where just a villain is so bad just
yeah,
because they love being bad. It's like, but with your like, have you ever seen that iconic Spider-Man page where it's like, with your powers, you could cure cancer. I don't want to do that.
Like,
I want to
to
turn
do
people
that.
into dinosaurs.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. So there was a character back in the early 1900s. It was a French character, so they used to serialize an awful lot of their stories. So some of the classics that we know, like the Three Musketeers and the Man in the Iron Mask, the French classics that we love, even like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, any of those classic authors published their stories serialized in the newspapers, like Charles Dickens would have. And there was a really, really, really famous one back then called Fantomas. And Fantomas was basically the world's greatest villain. He would wear a mask and he would commit these terrible, terrible crimes. They were huge. Like he'd like break into the opera and poison everyone just to steal one woman's pearl necklace and stuff. And it's so crazy and it's so over the top and there's so much fun and it's quite hard to get your hands on a copy. I think Penguin publishes some of them. They're so much fun. I'm a huge fan of like the old French classics, like the high adventure stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know anybody except for maybe Mark Miller, who did Nemesis, that basically said, how do we create a character that's a villain that's just a pure villain? And even in the Fantomas books, it's kind of about Fantomas, but very quickly it starts to swing over to being the story of the detectives who are after him, because readers kind of need some characters to like and respect.
Yeah, that's it. I don't think we'll ever get an ongoing where it's just this villain who
Exactly.
people need to have that connection. And there needs to be that feature, like, oh, my wife and kid died, or my husband and kid died, and now I'm angry and I hate the world.
Exactly.
And that's fine, I think, in some sorts, but I just love to see more. Yeah, I'm a villain just because I feel like it.
They have to be grounded in something, right?
Yeah.
And there's a really famous screenwriting book called Save the Cat by a guy called Blake Snyder. And it's called Save the Cat because that's one of these moments in a screenplay that he says, if you have an evil character, if you have him essentially kind of stop and save a cat and then continue on with his evil plan, that's what signifies to the person watching it that he's not really that bad. So these evil guys need a save the cat moment where we understand that like there is something redeemable that we can identify with. And that's totally fine. But at the same time, it would also be really cool to have like this. I think that's kind of what Ozymandias was supposed to be in Watchmen.
Oh, really?
This idea. Yeah, I think so. I think it was like, I think you have a character there that you can point at that was like, oh no, there's nothing redeemable about this guy.
Yeah.
Like he had, and one of the nice things about villains is that they are ideologically driven. So like they have a plan and they're only evil because they're prepared to pay any price at all to make
Yeah.
sure that that plan comes to fruition, and therefore they cannot be aligned with the values that we have as like well-adjusted people. I think there's something in it. I haven't. It's been on my mind for a couple of years. I'll crack it. Like,
That'd be
but
good. Very
I
good.
would love to just do a story of a bad guy who's just like,
Yeah, I love the point you brought about Ozymandias. I think he's just like he's such an interesting villain in terms of like I've had on so many rides, and like I'm fascinated with the villains as well. So I'll just talk to them about creating a villain and concepts. What I've heard most of them say is that no villain thinks they're a villain. Like no villain's gonna say I'm a bad guy.
100%.
And
Yeah.
when you have like even Ozymandias, who he killed men, women, and children.
Mhm.
He killed millions of people, and he still sits there and goes, "Yes, oh, it worked. I did it." And he actually thinks in some way, I'm the hero of this. I single-handedly took it upon myself to do this. And it's like, well, I mean, no, you're not. You're not a hero. And it's
But that's why Thanos was interesting.
Yeah,
like he had a drive. Like he was just committed. In any other place, like if he was a businessman, most people would be like, yeah, the guy had a plan and he executed it, and we like him because he's successful. It's just his values were not aligned with the greater like populace, and therefore he just didn't really kind of fit in anywhere. But like,
that's why I believe it's my moral responsibility to snort a lot of cocaine and steal crabs from Dublin Zoo, because if I don't, who will? And who will give these crabs a home if I
have led the crabs to a greater level of success at the expense of most humans. You don't know yet, but you'll know
down
soon.
with the crabs, up with the humans. No, other way around. Down with the humans, up with the crabs.
No. The first way you said it was perfect.
Oh yeah. On Garda Síochána, I would like to read. Me and Cian are not endorsing cocaine or any medicinal substances in any way. We're very much against. But for crabs, on the other hand, we'll
they can do whatever they want.
Up the crabs. It's their right to be crabs.
Wait until they're armed. Anyway, sorry, no spoilers or whatever. But anyway, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We can't reveal that. That's my twisting point in my story. But yeah, so villains are fascinating. That's interesting.
Yeah, big time. They always have been.
So Darkhold was a book. Was Dr. Doom in Darkhold? I can't really remember. He was.
Yeah,
right?
he was. It was a story that Steve Orlando wrote, and it was basically the Scarlet Witch wakes up and realizes that somebody has tried to read the Darkhold. And you find out that the Darkhold is like the Marvel Universe version of the Necronomicon. It's like the Book of the Dead. Yeah. And it had been buried as deep underground as you could go. And Doom has obviously gone looking for it, and he's found it. And he has a Doombot read the book because humans aren't supposed to read it. And the Doombot explodes. But through the Doombot, he could see what was within the book. And just by reading it, it has awakened this elder god that returns to, well, if it came back to Earth, it would destroy everything. So the only way that they could potentially beat this guy is to take 5 of the best heroes that we have and make them read just enough of the book to go crazy enough to be able to survive going into the book to fight this god. And that's what the Darkhold story was. And it was awesome. So it ultimately falls to Dr. Doom and Wanda to team up again and then try and defeat this final evil. And it was awesome. It was really fun to draw.
Yeah, and that was your first Marvel work. Or did you ever get to do a Silver Surfer cover? Or I just remember that image being super. Is it true? Did you do that image and then Marvel said, can we turn this into a cover?
Yep.
Oh wow. And so that must have been like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, why not? I'll let you do it.
I know this sounds a bit cliched, but I'd had a dream about the Silver Surfer kind of looking down, and what was happening was reflected in his board.
Like an actual dream. Like
as in like, well, when I say a dream, like as in like, when you're half awake and you're starting to think of something and it starts to kind of take on a life of its own. And when I woke up, I was like, oh, that would be such an awesome thing to actually draw. Like, because I don't think I've seen that before. And so when I kind of sketched it out, I was using a lot of the screen tone, like when you cut out the screen tones and you kind of like stick them on and you get like this lovely kind of like stippled kind of manga effect. So I had done that, and I think I had done it like about a year previous. And every so often I will reshare old work because like it doesn't hurt to kind of like push some of the old stuff you've done. And there is one of Sean Murphy's art, one of his biggest art collectors, Steve Mussolino. He had tagged CB Cebulski underneath this tweet and was like, this should totally be a Silver Surfer Black cover. And CB reached out to me and he was like, Cian, can we use this? And I was like, yeah, of course. And so I drew it again and resupplied it. And it was colored by Federico Blee. And Federico Blee, who had done some of the Nova pages that I had mentioned earlier that I did for Marvel. And Federico, based on that work, is the guy that I asked to do Superman, Son of Superman. So now Federico is working with me coloring. Yeah, so like this is how these like funny work relationships kind of come about.
Yeah, but it's interesting to you how you kind of got that in a dream. Like you were just half awake and you just kind of put it together there.
It happens sometimes, you know, if there's, I don't remember the exact moment in that instance, but sometimes when you're trying to solve a problem, you'll often kind of, if it'll kind of play over and over and over in your head.
Yeah.
You should be resting, but obviously whatever part of the bandwidth in your head or whatever the RAM is still kind of functioning away. So you're not sleeping properly, but like something's being solved. And sometimes you just like are left with one image out of something. And I was like, oh, I don't think I've seen that before. And now what I drew probably looked nothing like what I remembered. But the only thing I remember now is just that happened when I was dreaming. But like it probably didn't look the same. It's not that I was like some kind of savant and I was like asleep and painting or something.
And you're like, I let the art fuels me. The art is my
It's just like I'm merely the conduit. Like
the art flows through me. The canvas is my masterpiece.
Exactly. Yeah. That's like, not what happened.
Like, so I think 2 months ago, I didn't know. I woke up. I was like, oh, I had a dream, and it's like, oh, that's the perfect Constantine story. And I was thinking about it later in the day, and I was like, what the hell? That makes no sense. It was like, what was I even dreaming about? I woke up like I was like, oh, that's so good. I think this could actually sell loads of copies. And I woke up, I was like, what? That makes no sense. But yeah, there you go. It's just dreams. But yeah,
I genuinely feel like I had something similar. I'd say about maybe 2 or 3 days ago, where I definitely had a dream where I was like, this is it. Like this is genius. And I woke up, and the only thing I remember is just I remember waking up and just going, no, it's not. And like, I don't remember what the idea was, but like instantly it was just like, no, it doesn't always work.
Yeah, that was me. I woke up and I was like, oh, I created the perfect Constantine story? And then I sat, and then later on I was eating breakfast. I was like, what the hell was I thinking? That makes no sense. But yeah, there you go. And so before we wrap up, the last couple of things I want to touch on. This is stuff we talked about off air, I actually realized. But Quinos Buenos, can you tell us the backstory behind that? You told me off air, but I'd love for everyone.
That was just so when I was in my portfolio course before I went to my first year of art college, I became best friends with a guy called Richie Quinn. And Richie, when around just before when I met him, he had been a professional wrestler in Dublin.
Oh, like OTT?
I don't remember now. Like I was never into wrestling, so I met Richie and kind of understood more about it from the world that he'd been in. And his name was oh my god, Gonzo Demondo. That was the name of his wrestling character. So
awesome,
yeah, and he was brilliant. He was the bad guy, like. And I remember, I don't know what I was talking to him about, and I said, oh yeah, like obviously my name's Cian, and he went, oh, like didn't the B guy in The Simpsons go, "Oy, Quinos Buenos," and he said something like that, and then it just stuck, and they've called me that ever since. So that was about like 15 years ago, and
it's stuck, and that's why you can see it there. It's similar. And Cian Tormey, yeah, that's a fairly Irish name for anyone.
Yeah.
And I know I made I think like one of my earliest videos, me talking about one of your comics, and you commented. And you are so kind. You were like one of the first artists that ever like come to, and you were like, "Oh, great job! You pronounced my name correctly. I can just send it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, I did. Well,
yeah, you did.
It just happens, you know. Like I said, the art is my canvas. No, but it was so cool to me. And yeah, that's what. And then I also made another video talking about The Phantom, which was a book you did like at Dublin Comic Con. And you and I said, "Oh yeah, I recognize this because it was Cian's work." And I can't watch my old videos because I hate my voice. But you said you're a better detective than Batman. And I actually remember you saying that. I was like, 2 for 2. That means I'm brilliant.
Yes, nice.
Yeah, there you go. But no, Cian Tormey, have you struggled with that name? We were talking a bit off air, but people do tend to kind of say Cian or Sean.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely internationally, it's definitely it's a bit of a curse. Like the interesting thing is, on one hand, there are, I think there's like two other Cian Tormeys, but they're both younger than me. So
They're not in comics, are they? That'd be very
no,
weird.
they're not. But the thing is like I own the email address, I own the Instagram accounts, the Twitter accounts. Like if they want them, they can buy them. But like I got in first for everything. It's like I'm about 10 years older than the next Cian Tormey. So until one of them like arrives with a sword and fights me on like a hilltop, there can still only be one.
That's what I did. I fought every other Daniel.
Every other Daniel feels like
it's so much easier because they were all like 5 and under. So it's so much easier to fight them. That gave me the advantage. I think
I would say if you have to do it young. Yeah.
Ideally, I'm a man, so I'm willing to fight anyone that's under 5. You know, you got a problem with me, we'll straighten it out. Like I think that's just the best way to handle it sometimes. And plus I have the weight advantage, the height advantage.
That's it.
I kneel to no person under 5. Let that be known.
Nor should you. I endorse this message.
Yeah.
But so yeah, no, like
playing and beating up 5-year-olds. Damn. There you go. But yeah, no, but Cian Tormey, have you struggled with that name?
No, like the thing here is it's been fine, but when you go abroad, yeah, like I think just before we started recording, I was saying to you that the way the like linguistically in Irish, like we have a hard C, which doesn't really exist in English the way it's spoken in most other languages, most other countries. So for everyone else, it feels like it should be a Cian or something like that, like to have the I after the C. It would never be a hard C. You should spell it with a K, for example. So for like, it has happened to me quite a few times when I'm in the States. Like if I'm in Artist Alley, I've gone up to guys and said, "Hi, I'm Cian. Like I think you follow me on Twitter, and I follow you." And they go, "Not really sure." And then when they go, "Oh, that's how you pronounce it," and that has happened so many times. And if you see any online reviews of any of the stuff I've done, it's generally like Cian Tormey. And actually, I was talking to Rory Coleman, one of my best friends. He's a comic artist from up north.
Brilliant artist, man. He did Star Wars.
So yes, good. He did. And also just like has just finished the #1 Amazon best-selling series, Astonishing Times.
Oh yeah, and he's fantastic. I definitely gonna ask him on the chance. He's so good, so kind as well.
But yeah, no, you should. He's brilliant, and he's thoughtful and incredibly like structured in how he approaches the work that he's done. So like if you want to talk theory, that's the guy to get. He's brilliant. But he showed me a screenshot of whatever YouTube channel he was watching. I don't remember. And he was like, "Hey, I know this guy." And in the subtitles, it said, "Oh, and this is the latest work from," and in the subtitles, it said Cian Tormey, as in like SIAN. You're like, I'm not getting away with this at all. Like maybe I should just change my name.
Oh, you were snapping. Yeah. Raging. No, absolutely. No, but like I think they never get Tormey wrong, do they? Or no, Tormey's one they normally get.
Ironically, Tormey is said wrong here.
No way.
And not outside of Ireland.
How could you mispronounce it? Tormey?
Tormley, Tormby, Thorm, like every gross variation of the name. It's like, yeah, it's everything else.
I was blessed with a 3-letter second name. I don't have to.
Oh man, you've no idea.
No, I'm just, the thing is, when I'm so talented, I think that just factors into it. Once you reach my level of having just
trust me, I'm also incredibly talented, and it's no problem. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think per capita, my level of talent is a bit higher than your level.
Per capita, between the two of us. There's only 2 of us.
I have a
there are 2 caps.
Yeah, statistic board right here where I show a graph of how. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I can't imagine how people struggle with that. But Ruari, like we just brought there, I don't even know. He must struggle with that as well. But I definitely gonna have to have him on soon. But yeah, so working in comics, you know, there's such a great, you know, Irish art community. So were you growing up, like just getting into comics, were you part of the Irish art community? Were you introducing to these people? No, not at all.
No, never. And even now, like I read them, and then I stopped reading comics when I was about maybe 12 or 13 and didn't start again until I was about 22.
Yeah.
So So I kind of fell out for years and I didn't really draw anything. And, so I didn't get back into it for years later. So
Yes.
I wasn't really part of any kind of nascent scene here. So while it turned into the kind of thriving thing it is now, like I wasn't part of it. And so
And you
by the
just
time,
came in and did Superman.
well, to be honest, like not far off. Because
Yeah.
like, well, I didn't draw anything before. I didn't like the very first work I ever did was for DC on that Carl Higgins story. So I had written and drawn my own story based on Empress, the Mark Miller and Stuart Immonen book.
Was that for Miller World? Or
Um,
was this actually DC?
no, it was one of his independent books. So it's a Miller World book.
Yeah.
I love Stuart Immonen. Like he's my
So good.
favorite
So
artist.
good.
So I had drawn this thing because I was kind of looking at like how I like writing and I like
Yeah.
drawing. So I had done this story, and then I had sent some work to Kyle. Oh yeah, so I had gone to Canada because I found a comic studio there called the Raid Studio. And I was working as a senior art director in an ad agency, and I found this studio, and I was like, the idea of working in a studio full of comic artists sounds amazing. It sounds like working in the creative department of an ad agency. I'd love to see what that's like.
Yeah.
So I contacted them, and they said, yeah, you should come over and like take a month and like take a desk here in the studio. And I asked work if they'd let me go, and they did. So I went over to Toronto for about like 5 or 6 weeks, and I worked in this studio. And while I was there, I was working on James Asmus, one of my favorite
Yeah.
writers and one of the nicest guys. I had reached out to him and asked him, did he have a story maybe we could work on together? So we had started drawing this thing, and I was drawing that while I was there. And I was lucky that it was in August, and it was the same time as the Fan Expo in Toronto. And
Nice.
I had just like tweeted, oh, I'm here in Toronto. And Kyle Higgins, who is amazing, and I love
So
that guy
good.
so much, he had said, hey, are you here in Toronto? Because I'm here. Are you coming to the Fan Expo? Come over and see me. So I was like, okay, I wasn't going to go, but I'm going to go. So I cycled back across the city, and I went down to the Fan Expo, and I met him because I didn't know him before. And he was
Oh, yeah.
like, oh, dude, they've asked me to do this 10-page story, and I think you'd be perfect for it. Do you have any work that we could share? And so I shared this 5-page Empress story that I had done. And that's what got me the job with
Nice.
Alex Antone was the editor that got me the job. And Dave Wheelgosh was the assistant editor, and Dave has gone on to become one of my best friends in comics. He's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, his Man Bat Mini was
Oh
so
man, and he's a
good.
phenomenal writer. He wrote that.
Yeah, and
So
like he has no social media presence, but he is
no,
so unreal. I'd love I made a review of that. I love it. It's such a great Man Bat story. But yeah, Dave is so good. And
uh,
yeah, he was the editor on that.
best editor in the business,
Nice.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And so actually, my last couple of questions before we wrap up. Why is your dream comic book character? Who's that one character you haven't gotten a chance to work on that you'd love to do? And why is it my cocaine crab story that's yet to be written? What's about that character?
Okay, well, look, we'll talk about that off air. But
Of course.
the character that I would love to do, I would love to do. I think I'd like to do a Captain America story, and I know he's not a villain. Look,
Okay.
if I was gonna do like a villain, it probably would be Man Bat. Like one of my dreams had
Man,
been,
really, man, but that's
yeah, because like one of my dreams had been Clayface, and I had shared that recently, and Tom had tweeted me going, dude, if you want to draw Clayface, you have to tell me. And that's why Clayface was the bad guy in the Nightwing annual. So like he ticked that box for me. So that's done. Man Bat is definitely something. I just love these emotionally crippled
would you
villains.
make him look horrific, or would you do like would you make Man Bat look horrific, or what would you be your take on Man Bat?
I don't know, like, I know it's kind of, this is probably sacrilegious to say it, but like I kind of loved the Batman cartoons, but never really loved the Batman cartoons. Like I loved them growing up because they were on, right? Like you got to see Batman, but did I grow up with this like abiding love that so many people have for it? Not particularly. Like aesthetically, I get it. I love the kind of like mid-century aesthetic of it, but that's not kind of really where I am.
Yeah.
So, however, I do find if you read the Nightwing annual, you'll see that like I drew Clayface, but for me, Clayface was the Clayface from the animated series. So that's what I drew. So if I was going to draw Man Bat, would I go fully monstrous? I probably don't think I would. I think
Yeah, I think maybe if you make like, there's always two takes for characters like that. It's you can make him look like how he looked like an animal, or you can give him these big scaly back proportions, give him about 8 vertebrae in his neck, give him which I think is kind of something that I think you could get away with. But yeah, but Man Bat's a really fascinating. I think Batman just has the best.
I think I'd go for the humanity. I think I'd probably try and push that because I think that's where the tortured kind of sadness.
That's why I love Two-Face. Like I was chatting to Grant Morrison and they said Two-Face to them is there's those two sides to Two-Face. There's the side of him that's good. And I truly think that Harvey Dent, there is Harvey Dent and Two-Face. It's not Two-Face is Harvey Dent. No, it's Two-Face and Harvey Dent. And if Harvey Dent even got a choice, if it was just Harvey Dent controlling, he'd say, no, put me in jail. Don't want any of this, arrest me.
Yeah, exactly.
It was Two-Face that he'd say, no, kill everyone, stuff like that. Which and he's just such a great character. I really love Two-Face. But I see what you're saying there about the humanity of these characters. But yeah, Batman just has
to. Yeah, because I think like the monstrous part, I think if you concentrate, this is just my opinion, but I think if you concentrate too much on the monstrous part of it, you lose the point. Like it's very tempting to do that because that's really fun. And definitely as an artist, like that's really fun to draw, is to just like, these things don't exist. So you can lose yourself in really kind of drawing mad stuff. But sometimes you also have to kind of like pare that back and go, he's a Man Bat, and the fact that man is at the start is not incidental. Like that is the defining part of what has happened to him. So like he did not choose this, and therefore the thing that's going to make this character, the pathos of the character, comes from the fact that like it's so dreadful, and the best way to get that across is just how human he is. I mean, there's a reason why you see him kind of like doing human things in this tortured form, and that's where you feel for him the most. It's because he's doing the human things.
Yeah.
I would.
Do you know the best Batman villain of all time? Are you aware of the best Batman villain?
It's not Snowflame.
Snowflame. All right, listen. We could be here all day. So just
controversial.
This is called Condiment King. Do you know?
Oh yes. So okay.
He shoots ketchup and mustard.
I know.
That's all he does. So here, listen. Here's what I'm thinking, Bubba. Me and you, we go to DC. We pitch this Condiment King and Snowflame.
Let's go.
Condiment King and Snowflame team up. It was staring us right in the face the whole time. Cocaine and ketchup burgers.
The idea of like Snowflame like trying to like get something done on a table, sitting beside a guy who shoots like tomato and mustard all over it. I'm like, I don't see it.
That's no, you don't understand. It's my artistic interpretation.
Okay, well, listen, sketch it out, like get it down in a line, flesh it out into a paragraph. I'll work with you. I can make it work.
I'll write Alan Moore scripts for you because I can't afford you screwing up my vision. All right, yeah. So you've worked for this. This is a metaphor for human greed. When you rip away at its core, it's the requiem for a ketchup blaster. What do we see? It's the humanity of this cocaine sniffer and this ketchup blaster.
Humanity. I never thought about that.
Humanity. So like, that's what I meant to say. That's another part of it.
I thought it was like between crabs and huge manatees. I'm like, okay.
This is what we're doing on a grand scale, on an epic scale. All right.
I could draw that.
All right, you do the legwork. I do all the promotion. I do the publicity. I take all the fame.
You do all that, and I just do all that.
You be the yin to my yang. You be the click to my clack in terms of being
the click to your clack. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. No, my last and final question before we wrap up. Actually, no. I want to ask one more question. Would you ever do a team book? This is something I'm only thinking now, or is that something you've never read? Because Darkhold, there was a few characters in that, but would you really call that a team book? But would you ever do a team book if the opportunity arose? Because I think that would be like something new. Like you just brought up there playing with new things. I think that'd be Darkhold to be something new.
Well, so Darkhold had quite a few. You're right though. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a team book because like nobody really kind of worked. I know that's not the standard like industry definition of a team book. Nobody really worked together.
Yeah.
So it was like obviously a lot of characters, but no, like Injustice was kind of close. where
I didn't even think of Injustice. Yeah, absolutely. Injustice. Well, yeah, but so is team book something you'd ever like to, do something in the future, or is it like?
So the interesting thing about team books is it completely changes what you have to do when it comes to your storytelling, because there are so many characters. And you know the way people say, even anecdotally, like the difficulty for these huge Hollywood films is that each character needs their own screen time, and people like bring that up all the time. Like that's still true in the comics.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure characters are featured prominently. You have to make sure that the geography of your page is as clear when there are 20 heroes on the page, as much as if it's a Spider-Man comic and he's only talking to 2 other people on the page, for example. Like if the X-Men are all sitting in a room, you have to make sure that you know where everyone is. So for example, I think it was in issue 8 of Injustice Year Zero, there's a scene where Batman addresses the rest of the team. So like old and young heroes, or old and modern heroes alike. And so it's over 3 pages, and there's like 15 characters sitting around this table. And so you have to, I remember getting this, and most of the time you can kind of, you know who's involved in the scene, and you can like base the layouts around who needs to speak first and that kind of stuff. Like that's your job. But when you have 15 characters and you've got somebody sitting at the end of a table, and the first person who speaks is at the head of the table, like I had to sit down and do, if I can dig it out, like I'll send them to you. But I had to dig out like I had to design out like a seating plan for the table to make sure that I swear to God, it seems like a joke, but it was the only way that over the course of the 3 pages, depending on who spoke first, that I could manage who could speak in sequence and still maintain the geography of the room and the table that they were at.
I can just imagine you sitting down and saying, well, Wonder Woman would have to sit next to Green Lantern. And it's like,
and then at the end, Superman, like in the script, it's like, so Clark says something, and I was like, there's no way I can have him sitting at the table, because first of all, Superman doesn't really sit, like he's not the same as the rest of them. So like you can't have him sit at the table. And where do I need him to be if he has to respond to somebody at one end of the table? So I have to have him standing maybe away from the table. And therefore, in the first establishing panel, he can't be at the table at all, because I need him on page 3 to step in and say something. So like that's the level of complexity that sometimes the team books require. What I do, like, man, it's, and like I said before, sometimes these things are so much fun to crack. And if you're working with a writer who knows what they're asking you to do, like Tom knew that there was going to be a scene where 15 characters have to come up with a plan, and he wrote it in such a way that like it didn't ever leave me in a situation where one character speaks and then says something to another character, and there was no way that I could put them in a room together. Like, so when you're working with the right kind of writer, he knows what he's, or she knows, or they know what they're asking you to do. And so like, to be honest, would I do a team book? Yes. Would I do a team book with anybody? No. If I'm working with somebody who knows what they're asking me to do, 100%, because like it's so much fun.
So you're not interested in my Snowflame and Condiment King team up with my?
No, that's fine. Like if it's a team book, dude, let's do it. Like that sounds sounds like great crack. Obviously. But
I have loads of blackmail on DC editors, so it's fine. We can get this going. They owe me for.
We can get this done. I think it's great. We'll
this
start
is why it's so good to have blackmail. That's why I get to interview you people.
Yeah, compromat.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where the money is.
That's exactly it. I'm still working on Tom Taylor, but once I get blackmail on him soon, it'll all tie together.
That guy is squeaky clean, man.
Very hard man to get blackmail on. I might have to doctor some photos, you know.
Actually, just a nice guy. Sorry.
There's no nice people in comics. I found that out. I'll have to find a way. It's just
there's an exception to every rule, my friend.
Maybe. And no, absolutely. My last and final question: if anyone was looking to get into comic books as an artist, what advice would you have for them? Be good at drawing big crabs, and
that's a great, well, that's pretty niche, like that. I was actually
live amongst the sea animals.
I was very lucky that worked out for me. But no, if somebody wanted to get into comics, This is something I've thought about a lot, so I don't know that I could possibly give it in a single answer. But I would say, um, the difficulty with a question like that is that most of the advice that you would give to somebody, 9 times out of 10, is advice that they've either heard before or can't accept, or both. So generally speaking, like, okay, so in an effort to try and answer this in a way that may not have been answered before, when you draw something, say for example you decide to make your own comic, which you should do. If you want to work in comics, you have to make comics, and the reason why you have to make comics is because as you start to make something, you realize all the stuff you don't know about making something, right? That is true of any creative endeavor. It's not just comics, but specifically your storytelling, all of that kind of stuff, anatomy, acting, composition, lighting, inking, everything comes from, like, you can't read these books and then know it any more so than most college courses you do will be 4 years of studying, and then you'll go into an office and you will realize that you are not prepared to do any of the stuff that you're about to do. The courses can only get you to a point, but you have to do it, right? But people hear that all the time. How do I get a job in comics? Draw comics, right? It has almost become kind of like flippant, as people say, you want to make them, you have to make them. What I would say is a lot of people start to make comics and then they tend to keep going back and remaking the same comic, right? So you get a lot of people who will like draw a strip and then they say, no, I'm not happy with it. Like, I'm just going to go back and fix this panel. And then as they go on, they then go back and kind of do it again. And you end up in this kind of perpetual comic that just never gets made.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I would say that you don't necessarily hear a lot is that you have to finish a project and let it go and then start another one. And the reason why that's true but doesn't feel right is that every time you go back and you start to fix the comic you've already started, you feel like you're not getting anywhere and you're crafting this eternal project. But the reason you can see that something needs to be fixed is because you're getting better while you work on it. So you can make the same comic forever, or you can finish the thing you're working on, and all of the things that you've improved on and all of the things that you've learned since the thing that you started, you should apply that to the next comic instead of going back and applying it to the thing that you've already done. So that is the one piece of advice I would probably give that most people don't, I don't think I've seen that given before, is like, it's natural to try and fix something to the point where it's perfect, but it will never be perfect. No, yeah, what is it? Like, perfect is the enemy of the good. Like, just like, get it done, and then all of the stuff that you might not have even realized that you've learned while you were doing it, apply that to project 2 and just get project 1 behind you and just keep doing that. That would be it.
Absolutely. I could not have put it better myself. That's advice from the brilliant Cian Tormey, and he knows a lot about cocaine and crabs, which what more do you need to know? Like, there you go. You're welcome. You're welcome.
That's how I get through interviews.
Yeah, exactly. That's why halfway through you're saying, so yeah, that book. Yeah, I love that book. That was one of my favorite works.
What was that?
Sorry, are you seeing this as well? It's so bright in here, isn't it? It's so bright. Are you tired as well? I'm not tired. I stopped being.
No. Let's go again. What's the next question?
hit me with it. I want to know more. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone, Cian, before we finish up, are you on? Actually, I'd never shared my Justice League shirt. Everyone, there you go.
No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm just like, yeah, representing the cyclists.
So unprofessional. Yeah. Cian, you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anything like that?
Yeah. Again, like I said before, Cian Tormey, CIANTORMEY. That's me at Cian Tormey, Twitter and Instagram. Please say hello.
Any new books you'd like to promote or talk about, or anything people can go pick up?
Just please keep an eye on Son of Superman. and see where we're taking it. Yeah, we're 2 issues in now. So
from the Kal-El, issue 7 just came out. Issue 8 is a Bruno Redondo special. Who I'd love to have.
No, issue 8 is mine. Issue 9 will be Bruno, and issue 10.
So next month is your issue as well, yeah?
Exactly, yeah.
So next month, right, that's you. And then Bruno does issue 9, and then issue 10. And so
issue 10, we have a nice little Irish nod in there. So keep an eye out for that.
You telling me Colin Farrell's both eyes in this? Is this it?
No, unfortunately not.
I'm all out guessing.
Not unless he gets tossed into the sun. But
that was the logical idea. If it's not Colin Farrell's both eye, I honestly don't know what else.
I'm like sorry, what did you say? What was that idea again?
you can have Colin Farrell's bullseye. That's my gift to you. No, absolutely. Everyone, I'll talk to you a little bit keen off air. Everyone, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me over on Twitter at SamboGizmo1. As always, if you have the means, please make sure to donate to the National Deaf Children's Society. There'll be a link for that in the description. But yeah, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Go check out Keen's work. And yeah, thank you all for watching. Stay safe and long live crabs.